So here we are out at the corner of Scarborough Pickering Townline and Finch Avenue. Over there is Pickering. Over this way is Toronto. This is Beare Hill Park. There's a lot of trails back there we should probably do sometime. Great overlook of the city up in there as well. But you're probably wondering, I said before that Steeles in Pickering Townline was the most remote. Why is it more remote than this? Well, it might depend on perspectives, but basically this is easier to get to by transit. You can hop on the Lakeshore East GO line, get off of Pickering, take the 121 back over there to Altona, and you only have to walk about a kilometer to get to the corner of Finch and Pickering Townline. So it's, from a transit perspective, it's a heck of a lot easier to get here. For Steeles, because I wasn't wise and I didn't do something like Uber out to the corner, I ended up walking for about the entire length of that first video, all the way out and then all the way back. Which is why, if you're wondering why that video is chopped up into 3 sections, that's part of the reason. Because I essentially did about double the length of the first video, and I kind of went, maybe I should double back and do some of these other 2 sections later. Yeah. So we're gonna walk through here. Now Finch will turn into Old Finch a little bit further in, because this does not continue all the way through into Toronto. We're gonna have to take another road up ahead north, then cut across, and then come back down to Old Finch. So it's going to be a bit of a box route. Not sure how long this particular video is going to be. I assume it's going to be at least an hour, because Google won't actually map this for walking, because officially there's no sidewalks through here. And I'm looking here and I'm seeing this fence, and I'm suddenly wondering what business used to be back in there on Beare Hill that had to be fenced in. I doubt that will be easy to find out. But there's a couple spots in Toronto, or the GTA I should say, where there were these big industrial areas that were built up for World War II, or came out of World War II. And what they were making was less useful outside of wartime. And so these huge lots that we built up have been handed back to the city and turned into parkland. And most of that is actually in areas like this, where they needed to leave some space around chemical plants or explosives plants for either testing of munitions or making sure that if the munitions explode, they didn't take an entire city block with them. So it wouldn't shock me, given the nature of that fence, that there used to be some sort of plant back in there at one point or another, making something that they needed to keep people away from. There's actually a third option now that I think about it. And it could also be a former garbage dump. There are a few spots in Toronto, most notably, there's a place out near Etobicoke, if I recall correctly, where a former garbage dump has basically just been covered with a whole lot of topsoil. I'm gonna go over here and turn it into a park. So that's the other thing that could be. Flip over to this side of the road because it's a heck of a lot easier for the car coming up behind me to see me than the car coming over this hill. So now we're very much so into the Rouge Park proper. Over here now. Flip to the other side for the same reason I went to the other side. As far as I know, Finch never went straight through here. It certainly doesn't look like it. But as we saw when we went through the steel section of the Rouge Park up north, there is a reasonable amount of area where we've kind of bought out the owner and moved people out and kind of let the land grow back in. But through here, we're gonna have a lot more farms. And we're gonna turn north. Because someone's going to whip around that corner not paying attention and take me out. So there's technically the start of Finch over here. And now we're on Beare Road. Actually, cross back over to this side because now someone is liable to whip around that corner and take me out. Like that. So, yeah, Google won't map this route out for walking because, as I mentioned, there's no sidewalks back here. As long as you're paying attention and not sort of walking into blind spots, you can walk through here pretty safely. A lot of the area up here is marshland, so it's not really great for building on to begin with. But it's also why there were some signs back at the beginning about slowing down for animals, because we've got sort of beavers and turtles and all sorts of fun stuff back in here. I doubt we'll be able to see any today because it's not pretty sunny, so the beavers or the turtles aren't going to be out on the road trying to warm themselves. And beavers generally don't hang out around people much. They are very skittish. Unlike the deer we saw in one of my earlier videos, beavers have a tendency to see people coming and all you'll hear is a tail flap on the water, and then all the beavers in that pond are gone. Let's move over here. Pacific Main Line through Midtown Toronto. Someone's farm back up in there. Fun part is we're still in Toronto. When you think of Toronto, you don't really think of a farmhouse in the middle of the country. And yeah, on this side of town, that's still a lot of what's here. On the west side of town, almost all of these have been bought up and sold out for housing, except for some rare exceptions that we walk by on Steeles, most of which arguably have been bought up for housing, but they're in a holding pattern. They're waiting for someone to decide if they're gonna build or not. But through here and the Rouge Park, there's no allowances for development, which is fine. This area contains a lot of fresh water. Pickering and Toronto are kind of reliant on it for that. Arguably Markham to the north is as well. So protecting it from sort of development and contamination makes sense. There's also the reality that way back in the 60s, over in this area somewhere, the government bought a whole lot of farmland to build a replacement for Pearson. Or I guess I should say, a partner for Pearson. And the government's never proceeded with that. They probably shouldn't at this point. The reality is that it probably wouldn't end up being a good investment. Because the problem with Toronto isn't that it doesn't have sufficient airports around it. It does. It's just that Pearson's the main international one that's easiest for people in Toronto to get to. But over in Hamilton, they've got an international airport, which isn't anywhere near as big or as full of amenities as Pearson is. But what it does have is lots of land around it to expand into. And people are like, oh, the Hamilton airport would be too far away for effective transfers between Pearson. And the problem with that statement is that Tokyo's secondary airport is Narita. And it's pretty much so the exact same distance from Hanada in Tokyo as Hamilton would be from Pearson. The problem And the main difference between those two airports, or situations, I guess we should say, is that there's no rapid connection between Pearson and Hamilton. Whereas Japan has built up massive rail connections that connect those two airports within about a 45-minute to an hour train ride. In Toronto, you'd have to get on the 401 in rush hour to get between the two airports. That's the problem. But if we were to build a high-speed rail connection that ran from Pearson to Hamilton and could deliver you there in the same 45 minutes to an hour, all of a sudden, that airport provides the exact same relief that Narita does to Hanada. And the reality is, that even though Pickering would be physically closer to Pearson than Hamilton is, you'd still have the same problem of trying to cross the entire 401 to get there. Which, if anyone has driven the 401 lately, knows is pretty much a non-starter. Right? It's constantly backed up, slowed down. So any way you look at it, you'd somehow have to add a high-speed connection between Pearson and the Pickering Airport. Without it, you may as well not have it, because no one will want to transfer between the two airports. It's a non-starter. So you'd be better off building a high-speed rail connection between those two airports that already exist to make it easier for people to transfer between them. And extend that higher speed rail corridor into Pickering and Oshawa so that they can benefit to it as well. Because the cost of that high-speed rail corridor is going to be about the same as building a completely brand new international airport from scratch. And it'll serve the same purpose, which is basically create relief for Pearson, but it'll also act as a reliever on the 400 in the QEW, or the 401 in the QEW. Assuming I haven't confused the 400 and the 401 again. There's the CP bridge cutting across, and I'm pretty sure below us is the CN line that runs across the north of Toronto. Now, the reason I say that high-speed rail connection can act as a reliever on the 400 and the QEW, the 401 and the QEW, is because you could add local stops at the cities in between. As long as you offer a compelling price, and that may mean sort of subsidizing that route to a degree. Who wouldn't want to get on a train in Oshawa and be in Toronto in 30 minutes instead of backed up in traffic for an hour, right? Or say 15 minutes if you were going super fast. And it's why they released a study from the Ministry of Transportation that basically said, this brand new highway we're building up in Brampton, it won't do anything to reduce crowding on the 401 in rush hour. If anything, crowding is going to be worse. And it's because that highway does absolutely nothing to relieve people going east to west. Right? It's going to stop at the 400 just south of Barrie, or southish of Barrie. It's not going to cut across the entire thing and then connect up at the 401 and say south of Peterborough, significantly south of Peterborough, but for the sake of argument, south of Peterborough. That's what the 427 was supposed to do. But the only people who ride the 427 are people with money, because it's a toll road. And not a cheap one at that. So the road that was supposed to reduce traffic on the 401 isn't, because it's busy generating profit. Which, if you believe in profit above all, what the hey? But if you believe in actually making it possible for people to get around easier, that highway fails at that. Well, except for the people rich enough to ride on it. That is a fun corner. Come around a very blind corner into a narrow bridge gap. It would not shock me at all to find out that accidents happen there. But yeah. So that's my grand plan for improving transportation in Southern Ontario. Connect up Oshawa to Hamilton. And to be honest, I would probably continue on to Niagara Falls and probably even Buffalo if I could get away with it. Apparently, trains crossing borders is a fun diplomatic exercise. I would probably consider connecting Buffalo International, Hamilton International, and Pearson all together by high-speed rail. And run local and express service along that line. So that people don't have to drive between the airports. They can just get on the train and be to any of those three airports in a reasonable amount of time. can see why they've got the sign up to cyclists to get off and walk across. That is not a friendly bridge. I'm honestly shocked that people are driving over it as quickly as they are. It's almost like a steel mesh underneath your feet. And it's not even like a contiguous steel mesh. It's like a little bit jagged to it. And I could totally understand someone trying to go over that on their bike. And just the wheel getting caught. So if you're a cyclist, I highly recommend that you don't bike across that bridge. I wonder what this is or was. Or if it's another one of those houses like up north where they bought out the owner and they're just sort of leaving them there. Because a lot of these people are now living in a provincial park, or sorry, a federal park, the Rouge River Park, as mentioned earlier. And where possible, the government's buying them out and then letting the land sort of take itself back. And I think we might be at Old Finch. If not here, then up ahead. Because I know up ahead is the Toronto Zoo on the right. Sort of all the area over in there is for that. Which is probably why, to a certain degree, there's a reasonable amount of traffic here. It's people going from the zoo up to the 427 or back to Markham. Yeah. So basically, over in here is the back side of the Toronto Zoo. I don't know if there are any animals that we'll be able to see back here. I don't think that's going to be the case. Although I know, if I recall correctly, there is sort of a research and wintering hub up ahead, so maybe there'll be something back here we can see, but I doubt it. I think we'd get very lucky if we see any of the animals back here. So it looks like there used to be a snake habitat back here. That's where they keep them in the winter. Judging from the state of the barn, I'd say that's a legacy building. Someone's maintaining the grounds there, but it looks like the church itself is just closed now. Kind of curious if that cement block is for a driveway or if there used to be a road down there. Now this stretch is a little bit sketchy to walk down. There's way too many S-turns. So I'm honestly not sure which side of the road is the best to be on. Something in the zoo is annoyed. But this here is a road that I honestly wonder if it should still exist. Past the intersection, there's no houses on it. There's the old church, but the rest of this, I don't know if it needs to be here. This is another one of these fun bridges. So this particular bridge is so narrow that you have to wait for the lights to change to cross them. So again, another trailhead on the Rouge. Again, not the world's most fun bridge. That bridge is a heavy nope. A heavy, heavy nope. So here's where Old Finch goes Sewells Road. What I'm kind of curious about is which way actually takes me to Finch now. Not sure where that trail goes because it's not on a map. But we're going this way. So Sewells Road goes all the way up to Steeles from the looks of things. And Old Finch continues down south here. And I gotta admit that it is Finch, at least on this end, is one of the more interesting road layouts. I kind of wonder what it would have looked like in the 1800s, early 1900s. Whether this section here, which appears to be Sewells Road, was Finch curving north to get around the creek, or if Finch ever went straight across to where it sort of starts over in Pickering. To get over there, they would have to cross all the Rouge rivers. So my gut says that Finch on the other side exists very much as an entity of a grid map. Whereas I mentioned in the St. Clair East video, someone basically just drew a line horizontally across the map and said, this is where Finch is. And that was the way a lot of early settler design was done. And sort of the British grid map. Where where basically they just started drawing boxes. This main street is going to go this way, and then the next one's going to be this far north, and it's going to go this way. The next one's going to be this far north, and it's going to go this way. And then this one's going to be here, and it's going to go down like that. And then this one's going to be here, and it's going to go down like that. And those grid maps work really good at subdividing cities out into blocks until you run into ravines. And in some cases, mountains and other things. But it was commonly used for urban design for decades. So much so that when the Americans went into Japan after World War II and effectively governed it for a few decades, a lot of the areas that were destroyed in the war were rebuilt on grid maps. And sort of the same mentality baked itself into Japanese design as well. Because a lot of modern building techniques in Japan were imported from Europe. So you can tell in some cases which parts of Japan were built when by how the city's laid out. Other fun things like whether or not the streets have names. And there are exceptions to that rule. It mostly applies on flatlands. The cities that were built up in the hills very much so are tailored to the terrain. They kind of arc in and out of valleys. Kyoto, to a certain degree, is like that. It's kind of a combination of areas that are a bit more modern and built on grid, and areas that are a bit more, the road goes this way because that's the way the land goes. That's a certain YouTuber likes to say, they respect the terrain, right? You don't just plow a whole city through a hill. You go around the hill. And there's lots of parts of Japan where they've essentially done that. Where the streets kind of wind their way in tiers up a hillside. The interesting thing about this is that despite it being called Old Finch, they've left enough road space here to actually turn it into a proper extension of Finch if they wanted to. And I mean, that would be unfortunate. It's kind of quiet-ish, relatively speaking. The other thing I want to point out are the super boxes over there. To save money, Canada Post wanted to stop doing door-to-door delivery and just deliver to postal boxes. The problem with it is that whoever designed the program gave no consideration to practicality. Because seriously, who the heck wants to go there to get their mail? Like, it's not in front of someone's house, it's not off to the side, it's not near a parking lot, it's literally on the side of a street, halfway in between one subdivision and another. Why would you do that? Right? I'm sure someone has a reason. The reason is stupid. It's as simple as that. And that's why they ended up having to stop rolling the program out. It's because they kept making bad decisions about it. Finch stops here at Morningside Drive. So we're gonna go up and around the bend here. at the corner of Finch Avenue East and Morningside.